So you may know people in passing who have autism, or you may have heard of people, strange people. I remember one of the other speakers was telling me about a man in her neighborhood who probably has autism, but he would go outside. He would put his seat down to watch his kid play in the yard. Sometimes he would go in her backyard as well and go onto her property. Extremely inappropriate, but I mean, he didn't know he's autistic. So there's a lot of different quirky, strange, behaviors and things like that arise from it. It's very hard for people to put it into perspective. And I've grown up on the other side of this wall of this coming out of the womb and experiencing a kind of shocking and really, really bothersome experience about reality. The way I experience information in general, the way I experience life has been quite troublesome. I think in one way to paint it in this case, I got diagnosed with autism when I was 17. Before I got diagnosed with ADHD, because everybody was diagnosed with ADHD 10 years ago. I later got diagnosed. The way I got diagnosed was because I was, I'd like to preface this with I have utmost respect for the people who put their time and energy towards the education of our young, and try to work with what we have to work with within a giant kind of grinding gear of standardization that children have to go through. At the same time, I think kind of through a bit of a monologue, through kind of prepubescent catharsis, I got diagnosed in my biology class because I got red flagged for saying that people on the school board should be executed for ruining the education system. At the time, I was kind of more focused. I was like, no, you don't understand. It was more about think about the implications of how the next 10 years, 15 years of my life is going to be painted by the different types of classes that I'm going to go through, the different types of impressionable instances that I'm going to have with my peers, and the impact that's going to have on all of my peers and all of the people around me. The whole other execution part was just, how do we get these people out of the way so they're not ruining the education system? Very misguided. And in this case, if you look at it in retrospect, there's so much that goes into this large kind of political wheel of delegation related to executions and related to dealing with people who have different types of behavioral issues in this case, or who've messed up. There's not really many ways to deal with these people. There's not really many ways that any single person in this room has opportunities in their day-to-day life to really dig at the actual experiences that each individual person is going through. It's very difficult. I spend every waking moment of my time contextualizing the experiences of other people. I'm running essentially programs of other people's experiences, and I'm running a model of that in my mind. I've gone off script, but so the strangest thing that I ever did, I don't think I even need this anymore, but the strangest thing that I've ever done in terms of autism, in terms of being trapped kind of in a very specific and idiosyncratic experience where I can't properly explain the information that I'm taking in is being filtered through an array of different types of offset stimuli that I can't properly process. And all of that kind of went into kind of a melange in my high school years of kind of hermiting in my room and creating a whole alien ideology, because I thought that aliens were communicating to me, because I couldn't figure out why exactly people would behave the way that they would. I was willing to believe it as an extension of belief, but at the time I developed a language that this is part of my obsession, because every single person with autism has a specific type of obsession or something that they immerse themselves in, kind of to make things a little bit more bearable. I created a language that had around 5,000 words in it at the time, and I was looking into kind of the topology of the mouth, the way in which you can articulate different types of sounds and phonemes, and the most efficient way in which they can be articulated, most comfortable way, the amount of sounds that you can fit into a language while also having the same amount of information. I stopped this because it's extremely maladaptive and it's not good for, your development basically. But I basically gave that up. I've got a few other passions now and interests that I have going on, and those are just as crazy, I would say. But one thing about language is that the beauty of language is that it's held with people. It's not something that can be manufactured. There's a lot that I thought could be manufactured in this case, but I've come to learn that everything that we do, every experience that we have, crafts the world around us. I used to think it's very mundane, like all these different things people talk about is, believe in yourself. But what does that mean? Give me a piece of paper that gives me numbers that I can add up that make me believe in myself, It's like, but it's amazing because it represents each instance that people would have where they would have their magnum opus. They would come to a point where they would have this intense word to say for this experience. It's because they can't fathom the thing that they're experiencing, because it's so profound, it's so ground shaking. Like listening to those two other stories, the only word that I could think to describe that as would be that you had the strength of strength of Spider-Man in this case, because it's really difficult to contextualize all of that experience, boil it down into something that can be conveyed to other people. We have to use aphorisms, we have to use the ideas that have been given to us, a language written in superheroes, written in the experiences of other people, to kind of explain to each other the profound experience that we've had, essentially. In this case as well, I should probably mention what I meant by the brain, or essentially the child's brain, hallucinogenic drugs, and artificial intelligence being related to autism. Basically, to go into that really briefly, at least from what I've looked at, the way in which the mind works typically, or the brain works, it uses something called incentive salience, which is where when you interact with some sort of object, some sort of thing outside of your environment, you have a giant feedback of neurons flying up into your brain, and they cycle through, and you have what's called a dopaminergic feedback. So when you touch something, you get a bunch of sensations from it. You experience those sensations, and then you begin to get some sort of positive feedback. The gear starts spinning, and you start thinking, oh, wine tastes good. And you start drinking, and you start moving, basically. With a child's mind, children start off with basically a tabula rasa, a blank slate. People with autism have a discrepancy in the way that the brain develops from childhood. Children start off with, in this case, you could play peekaboo with a child, not because the only thing that they see is the eyes, but because all of the information that they see is pretty much the same information we see, the same experiences we feel, kind of rendered down. None of it's specialized. None of it's categorized. So over years and years of your development, you begin to categorize all of the stimuli. You begin to take the image of an apple. For apples for me, they look like glistening gumdrops. The shapes and the contours, there's so many angles that I haven't seen of apples before looking at them. Every time I see a new apple, I think, well, it's not just apples, tables as well. But every time I see a new shape, a new object, or a new apple, there's so many different details I haven't seen before that I like to pick apart and look into. There's so many details that get, messed up, basically. I have a tendency to make people cry sometimes. It's accidental. There's one time where basically I was talking to somebody who had OCD. They were unable to essentially tell somebody or to explain to people what their experiences are like. I have specific overlap with certain types of pathologies like psychopathy, sociopathy, schizophrenia, OCD. Because I have autism, there's a kind of a mimicry to it in a sense. So I was able to listen to them and talk to them, and they had a moment where they were able to share an experience with somebody who they didn't expect to share an experience with. It was very quick, it was very intense, and it was simply just by talking to them. There's, in this room, probably, I don't know how many people in this room, but probably, I can't count, but there's probably like 50 people in this room. There's 50 whole life experiences happening, and that are happening right now. You're probably experiencing wondrous wonder sensations. You're probably having very intimate moments in your daily lives. It's very difficult to explain that to people. It's very difficult to unpackage that. I felt trapped for a very long time, and I had no way to explain what I was feeling. I've gotten around to explaining that and talking to people about it, and I think that people need to take more time to try and share experiences with each other, because each person you interact with has a world of experience that they're ready to share with you.